And joining me on the call today, I'm super excited about having Daniel Callegari from Expert Business. Welcome to the call, Daniel.
Thanks, David. Thanks for having me.
It's a pleasure. So Daniel is a business broker and advisor and really focuses on that step no one wants to talk about, which is exiting their business, right? And I think it's a really important element because often when we're working with business owners, one of the challenges we have is most people don't see the end, right? All they're thinking about is today and yesterday and maybe a little bit of tomorrow, but they're not thinking about the end. And I think ultimately, and it's a bit of a tragedy to say this, but everybody leaves their business at one point in time. Sooner or later, you're going to go, right? You can
Yeah.
go gracefully or disgracefully. And I think the graceful way to exit is to think about it in advance and start to work out whether you're going to sell or whether you're going to close the doors or whether you're going to let management take it over, but literally just thinking about what is the next step. So do you want to give us a little bit of insight into, what Expert Business is all about, what you guys do?
Yeah, sure. So we've been brokering businesses for around about 10 years.
Yeah.
So over that time, we would obviously look under the hood of a lot of businesses and talk to a lot of buyers as well and see what they are looking for. But also, there's the common pitfalls and the common things that make a business probably not saleable and sit on the market for a little bit too long. So what we've done is we've actually looked at setting up a advisory division through Expert Business.
Yeah.
Which we actually help business owners prime their business for sale. So it's a little bit more appealing to a potential acquirer, whether that be a trade purchaser, strategic buyer, or professional investor, or maybe
Yeah.
even like a mum and dad investor as well. Okay, so we work with a business owner not only in the transaction and putting the business on the market and selling that and eventually getting them the exit, but we also work with them a little bit before that period of time in that business, because what we're generally finding in the market is there's a big flight towards quality. There's really no sense of urgency to buy a business for a lot of these purchases. They'll just pretty much just sit back and wait for that right type of business. That could be up to 2 or 3 years or so.
Yeah.
So what we do is we actually make that business a little bit more appealing. So that's in the top 20%. And that's what generally gets acquired. And what gets acquired is what's transferable. So the value is transferable. So Expert Business, that's our brokerage and advisory firm. But we also do have Expert Business Valuations, which is a standalone specialist business valuations firm. So my background is I'm accredited business valuer and a broker. So they work hand in glove to be able to identify the value and then just work out how we can improve that value or what some business owners can do to improve that value upon exit. So they're exiting on their terms and not on the terms as you spoke about before, shutting the doors down or even having to keep the business and trading through it into the years where they should be maybe retired.
Yeah, fantastic. Look, I know you're a big fan of Stephen Covey, and I think one of his 7 habits is beginning with the end in mind.
Yeah, that's definitely what we would. Beginning with the end in mind. Your end game is you've got to be thinking of that, and we really advocate early engagement. So a lot of our referring partners, our professional partners, refer their clients in. Let's say it's an accountant, and they would probably refer them in, a little bit before when they're ready to sell. We don't really want to get a business when they need to sell because it's not going to be sold on their terms. So generally, having the end in mind and having the planning and having the runway to be able to plan adequately to exit, really helps. But also, you get a better result, from a financial standpoint. But also, you don't have to stay in the business as long after post acquisition, on a 1 or 2 year retention. So you can probably exit that business a little bit quicker. So you're going to be doing the work anyway. You can either do it beforehand and having that end game in mind and building a really good quality business that can be transferred, or alternatively you can you let the market decide how you're going to exit.
So let's talk about the $1 million question here: is valuing a business. For most people in business, they either got zero idea of the value of their business, or they have an inflated version of it in their mind, and they think it's worth a lot more than it is. How's a business valuated in general terms? If we keep it simple, what's the quickest way to sort of assess a value?
Yeah, you're right in saying that. Like, we do sit across the table from a lot of business owners, and I'd be lying if I said that the business owners didn't think their business is valued more than what it actually is worth.
Yeah.
It's just probably that bias that you've been working in it for so long that you probably overinflate the value. But in general, what happens is the market's only going to pay for what they're going to pay, and that's what determine the value of your business. So yeah, the market method is one of the methods that we apply to all of the valuation engagements. So what we'd do is we'd also look at, that's more practical, real world. Okay, this is what businesses are trading for in this industry. There's a return on investment, and we would make sure that all of our engagements are cross-checked with the market method. So what we also do is the methodology you would use is like a discount cash flow if the business has got pretty stable cash flows, but also comparative sales as well in that industry. It's a little bit harder with SMEs because there's a lot of moving parts with businesses. You would find that every business is a little bit different, so you can't really get an industry multiple and apply it. But there is like industry rules of thumb that you can use. So for instance, like retail or import distribution would have an industry rule of thumb, as would transport and logistics. So you can overlay that as well. But also what we do is we look at valuing the business from a financial standpoint. So you'd have to actually get adjustments, do adjustments, making sure that the actual bottom line is what the business is going to be making when the new owner takes over. So that's the dust settles. That's the profit which is going to be able to be there. So that doesn't include all your family holidays, cars, your daughter's mobile phone, for example. So we'd actually undo a lot of that work the accountant does. Okay, and we get that bottom line, what the business is really making.
Yep.
What's likely to transfer and be available to that cash flow to the new owner. But then what we'd also do is apply an industry multiple, okay, to that. So there's two sides, two variables. There's actually the future maintainable earnings, and then there's also the variable which is the industry multiple. And that industry multiple will be dependent on a lot of different factors. Okay, so whether they get a premium or whether they get a discount would be depending on look, how transferable is that value. Okay, like for example, if they have recurring revenue, they would actually or contract revenue, that would be at a high multiple, and someone that would have a shop front, and if nobody walks in, there's no sales being made for the week, and that business doesn't make any money that week. So that's how we would obviously balance it, but you'd have to apply your judgment as well in applying that multiple.
Yeah, and you brought up an interesting point, because I feel like a lot of people in business, they're just thinking cash flow. I want to grow my business, I need to sell more stuff.
Yeah.
And you're sitting here saying, well, selling more stuff doesn't necessarily increase the value of your business. If anything, it could work in reverse.
Yeah.
So I think part of it is like, it's advisable if a person's thinking of selling or exiting at some point in the next 50 years, which should be everybody, they probably should get some baseline of how is this business valued? How's my industry look at things? And what are the things I should be tweaking?
Yeah, definitely. And look, if you get a business valuation, it's telling you what your business is worth right now, okay, prior to when you're going to exit. So then you can make some really smart business decisions off the back of that, okay, because you're not having that false illusion that your business is worth more than what it's worth. We find that's all the time. We do sitting across the table from business owners, and they have gone about running their business, making a profit, and they don't understand that what they've got is not transferable to a new owner. So what happens is that actually getting an insight into the risks from an insight from how an acquirer would see the value of your business rather than how you see the business allows you to be able to go out and get proactive and fix these things before you go put the business on the market. What actually happens is that business transacts in a lot quicker time frame rather than sitting on the market for quite some time. What you said before. I mean, look, there's five things that'll happen if a business goes on the market, and if it doesn't sell, they're either going to keep it and keep trading through. Okay, they're either going to shut it down, close the doors. They're either going to give it to a family member or a co-worker, or management that understand the business. And they're also either going to drop the price down to represent really, really good value, but that's also not exiting on their own terms. And then someone will say, okay, great, I'll purchase that business, or they improve it by improving the value of the business.
Yeah, right. So based on your experience, what do you think are the biggest pitfalls, the mistakes people make when they're building their business?
Okay, so the pitfalls that we find is like one of the things is your personnel, your team, and your people. Okay, so what we generally find is the business is built around the owner. Okay, or the owner's got too much involvement in the business. They essentially are the business. So, for instance, they may have like even the team around them as well. Maybe like you might know Bill from under 16s footy that's been with you all the way through your career, and you're around the same age. And if you're retiring, well Bill's following you out the door
Yeah, gotcha.
shortly after. Is that new owner going to be able to transfer the knowledge, but also is Bill happy to stay on board when you're not there? The other thing as well is that you also got suppliers, for example, over reliance on one supplier. So you might, oh, well, this supplier's been with me for the last 20 years, or a family, they're a family friend, but are they going to give the supplier the same give the same supply terms and the same price to the new owner that's taking over? So we want to make sure that it's not reliant on the owner, but also it's not reliant on any one particular customer. It's too concentrated on one customer or one supplier. So we want to make sure that we're alleviating a lot of that risk that could potentially come up and be a risk to someone's investment that they're going to put on the line. A couple of other things as well. Like, I mean, people don't have, like, for example, like a really strong lead generation process. They rely on referrals. So, they're getting referrals and, they're making money and the bottom line looks really good. But what happens when the owner leaves the business? Is that referral source going to dry up? Do they have a clearly defined lead generation and sales process rather than, the owner comes in and, they're good on the talk and they basically just wing it every single time, but they get the sale like 95% at the time. Of course, they've been 25 years, but do they have something that's transferable? And these are the things that, the owner will say, oh, okay, now you've actually made me aware of it. Now let's start implementing maybe a way we would look at hiring, but also generating leads, which is not so dependent on myself, the business owner.
Yeah, fantastic. Because in our world, we look at it as the number one is the highest risk in any business. So one supplier, one customer, one product, one owner. If any of those things fall over, the business has a massive impact on the business. So what you just described is the same thing in a different way, which is saying, look, you've got to take the risk out of the business to improve the value of the business. And that can be done in early days as you're preparing for sale. Even if you're not selling for 5 or 10 years, you could already start laying some of the groundwork in play to improve that value. Yeah,
definitely. Look, the more concentrated it is, whether you're one person, one supplier, one key customer, the more risk it is if that one thing, person or company or other business you deal with goes and moves off. So that will come up. That will come up. Like any savvy buyer is going to identify that in the due diligence process, and they're probably not going to offer a attractive multiple or a price that they're looking to obtain. So we get in a little bit earlier and make sure that they diversify and they're also spreading their knowledge across some of their staff members as well. And also the staff members aren't all tied up with the owner, their family, for instance, and they'll stay. So concentration risk is quite important, but it's also something that any advisor or any accountant or any solicitor is probably going to bring up in the due diligence process. So you might as well get ahead of the curve and fix them before you go on the market.
You know what I equate this conversation to is when people go to sell their house and the real estate agent comes in and looks at it and says, you probably need to fix up the garden and you need to give this a fresh coat of paint and you need to just put a couple of throws on the bed. And by the end of all of these minor renovations, the house looks really good. And it's just the things that they never got around to because they thought, we'll get to that later. That's not something that's mission critical. And I think what you're describing is, unless we're thinking of selling, we probably won't do a lot of these things because we're going, hang on, we're making money. What's the point of doing all these things? We'll do them later. And you're saying, well, if you do them now, you de-risk the business and you improve the value, which means it's more attractive to the right buyers as well.
Exactly. Yeah. Look, I do quite the same analogy to a lot of my clients. Okay, the real estate agent comes in, and you might you put a little bit of investment into doing up a renovation, doing the kitchen and the bathroom, and it's going to add 3 times value what you spent. And it's a bit like that when you're investing back into your business. Okay, but we also find with the order you do things in is important. Okay, because every business owner, I haven't come across a business owner that wants to start with fixing up the employment contracts first. Okay, they want to start with how do I increase profit? Okay, how do I increase cash flow and profit? And then what happens is we generate the cash flow and profit, and then we can channel that into other parts to it that in the business that need improving. right? So we have a system which is a prime system. It's priming your business for sale, but it's also an acronym as well. So it's P stands for profit maximization. Let's start with that. Let's try and have a few easy wins and free up some cash flow and generate a little bit of more profitability in the business. And then we look at risk mitigation, which is what we spoke about before, and among other things. And then we're also looking at investment readiness, like how investable is your business to an outside acquirer? Okay, is it investable or it's not? And then you've got to look at market strategy or go-to-market strategy. How are we going to position this so it's appealing to maybe a trade buyer if that's what you're looking for, or an investor? And then exit execution. So then you go and execute that. But there's a whole lot of planning and preparation beforehand, and then you execute on the exit. Okay, a lot of people do it the other way around. Let's just put it onto the market and let the market decide. Generally, they're putting it on the business on the market on a higher price point, and the market doesn't meet it, and then your price comes down. Okay, or you do one of the 5 things.
Cool. Well, there's a lot to think about, but if we're going to summarize the top 3 tips for someone who's sort of, not really thought too much about this, but one day in the future they figure they're going to sell this thing, what are the top 3 things they should be looking at straight away?
Okay, looking at getting a market valuation would be a starting point. Okay, so everything can be, a lot of the decisions can be off the back of that market valuation. So just knowing where you're at is really important, because then you can go out and engage advisors to go out and help you improve your business or plug some holes that may need to be you weren't aware of beforehand. Okay, also extrapolating yourself out of the business or working out ways that you can extrapolate yourself out of the business. Okay, so you're not the one that's doing all the work if you're a business owner. So how can we replace ourselves out of the business so we're working on the business, not in the business? I'm sure a lot of business owners have heard that. I say the final one is looking at your revenue and seeing if you can actually bring in more reoccurring revenue, or on a subscription model, or something that can be transferred. It's a bit more predictable, where it's instead of being on a handshake agreement or it's on a week-to-week basis, it's very highly fluctuating. That basically allows you to forecast a little bit more or budget. And also it allows you to say, okay, we've got some revenue that will transfer over. Doesn't matter who's wearing the jacket, and that's probably the 3 major things that we would suggest.
Yeah, fantastic. So if people wanted to seek you out to sort of maybe, because you guys do valuations, right?
Yeah, we do valuations. So we've got a valuations practice, which is Expert Business Valuations. And we also do have an advisory firm as well, which is Expert Business Advisors. And we've got a brokerage as well that we do, transact a lot of our businesses through. So at any stage anyone's in the business, we're happy to talk to them, point them in the right direction as well. But also, having a formal valuation may not be what the business needs. They may only need just an appraisal, like that's used for like a micro business, under $1 million or so. So, you don't need to go into the full extent and getting a formal valuation that's, is with all the bells and whistles. You may only just need an appraisal just to put you in the right direction. So we're happy to talk to anybody and just make sure that we identifying what they need to do prior to exit. But we do advocate early engagement. So the earlier that we can speak to people prior to exit, the better it is for them to be able to go off and implement some of the things that we may suggest.
Yeah, fantastic. So the best way to contact you is to just Google the name.
Yeah, sure. So Expert Business is the business, Expert Business Advisors. Look, we've got our webpage, which is www.expertbusiness.com.au. There's plenty of information on there, and all our contact details are on that site as well.
Yeah, fantastic. Daniel, thanks so much for your input today. It's been really useful, and I hope the people listening understand the importance of getting the true valuation of their business. So thank you.
Thanks for having me, and thanks a lot.
Yeah.